Welcome back. You are watching Newscenter. It's day 3 of the same-sex marriage pleas hearing in the Supreme Court. The bench led by Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud asked if two spouses who belong to the binary gender are essential for marriage. He went on to say that the court sees same-sex relationships as not just as physical relations, but something more of a stable emotional relationship. The centre has raised apprehensions on the impact parents from the LGBT community could have on their children. In response to this, the CJI has asked whether children of heterosexual couples are not at risk when they see parents engaged in domestic violence. Ashmit Kumar joins us now with the latest developments. Ashmit, take us through what happened in court and by when could these arguments conclude?
Well, as you pointed out, today was day 3 of the arguments that took place, the third consecutive day. The petitioners essentially have been arguing, and what's important is that they have been pressing that as far as the court's intervention is concerned, not only is it required, it is also in fact not opposed to any parliamentary or any legislative activities, that the court can in fact take the initiative, that it needn't wait for the parliament to act. What's also interesting is that one of the counsels appearing in this case argued that quite unlike what the centre has argued, that this is an urban elitist phenomena, the lawyer, in fact, pointed out before the top court that he's representing a couple which involves a partner from a small town in Haryana and a partner from a small town in Punjab, and arguing that it was insensitive of the centre to argue that this is an urban elitist concept. Further, the petitioners argued that while the centre bats on one hand by issuing an act for protection of transgenders, to argue that transgenders cannot marry and enjoy the same rights is purely discriminational and cannot be tenable under the constitutional framework. Keeping in mind these arguments, the CJI made some pointed observations. In fact, the observation was aimed at the centre's submission as to what impact an LGBT couple will have on their own children. Towards that end, the Chief Justice reasoned that the impact of a heterosexual couple engaging in domestic violence where a husband beats the wife over alcohol would be far more deleterious, would be far more dangerous. And in fact, in doing so, also took a dig at social media, saying that this comment will probably inspire sharp comments and trolls on social media, but that, the Chief Justice said, was the name of the game, and that questions that he's raising in court are getting answered by trolls on social media. Now, that marks the end of day 3. The arguments, we understand, will resume on Monday. That will mark day 4, and day 4 is when the petitioners are expected to conclude their arguments.
All right, joining me now to take this forward is Anjali Gopalan, founder and executive director at the NAS Foundation. How important, Ms. Gopalan, there are 30 countries where same-sex marriages are recognized. Legal validation of same-sex marriages, how important is this for India and how difficult could the road be?
Well, of course, it's very important. It's about time we stepped into the 21st century. At the end of the day, we are in a democracy. There's no reason for a set of people in this country not to have the rights that every citizen takes for granted. The fear that people have that it's going to create mayhem, which is what the centre has said, doesn't make sense. It's not based on logic. You've heard what the CJI had to say today. If you go to family court, you see the kind of what children are going through in heterosexual from parents who are in heterosexual relationships. So I think there's absolutely no logic in the kind of arguments that are being put forth by the centre.
Ms. Gopalan, do you also feel that the centre is trying to delay proceedings in the case as much as possible? They've also asked states and union territories to be made party to the proceedings. On pleas seeking legal validation, the centre has said that it is consulting states. Do you think if the Supreme Court agrees to this, it could delay things further?
Of course, it's a waste of time. Why do we need the states to be included at this point of time? After all, the apex court is completely in a situation where they can give us a judgment, right? So why are we then wasting time in this manner? Of course, it is all a question of delaying. Doesn't make sense at all.
Right. It was in 2018 that the Supreme Court reaffirmed the High Court's order reading down homosexuality, Section 377, which had criminalized homosexuality and decriminalized the section. How much ground has been covered? What more needs to be done? we see many corporate houses, many companies coming up with gender-sensitive policies, LGBTQ plus policies as well. But how much ground really have we covered?
Look, what happened with the reading down of Section 377, the only thing that happened was homosexuality was decriminalized, which means that people from the LGBTQI community were no longer seen as criminals. But that did not give them any rights at all. Rights that we take for granted in this country. The right to marry, the right to inherit, the right to get whatever benefits that people in a married relationship get. So, of course, we need to go beyond decriminalizing. The first step was to decriminalize, but then after that, what? We have to ensure that people have rights that should automatically come to them. There's no reason for people from the LGBTQI community not to have the same rights as the rest of the people in this country. I mean, where is the logic in any of it? Why would you deny a whole bunch of people, even if you want to believe they're a minuscule minority, which they're not, but even if you want to believe that, the point still remains that you cannot deny they are citizens of this country. So you must give them those rights.
Right. Right. I would also like to ask you about the centre stand. The court has said, essentially, the Supreme Court cannot create or recognize marriage either by a judicial interpretation or reading down the existing law in reference to same-sex marriages. Keeping this in mind, if the Supreme Court tomorrow rules in favour of the petitioners, will the fight be successful, or more would have to be done? More enabling laws would have to be brought in, more changes in laws would have to be brought in?
Look, whether you like it or not, you have to have laws which are gender neutral. So the courts are very clear that they don't want to touch the personal laws, right? Which is fine. In the special marriage laws that you have, you will then have to ensure that other rights are also given to people who will marry under the Special Marriage Act. For example, the right to inherit, the right to adopt, the right to get benefits of insurance, or whatever other benefits that should accrue to you as a married person. So definitely some tweaking of that law has to take place. And that's not rocket science, and it's not a very difficult thing to do. Because as it is, all you have to do is make sure that instead of man and woman, you are saying spouses. So it's not something that's that's very difficult to accomplish.
Right. Anjali Gopalan, thank you so much for joining us on the same-sex marriage debate that is on in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, of course, nudging all parties to wrap up arguments at the earliest, and we believe the arguments will continue on Monday as well. Thank you once again for being with us here on Newscenter. That's a wrap for the moment, but don't go anywhere.